In structured streaming, stream data is unbounded, and it is treated as continuously appended table while supported incremental processing. It is expected to work with append-only data sources. This applies to streaming tables in Delta Live tables where changes in existing data such as updates and deletes break this exception. We need to add deduplication logic to identify updated and deleted records. The apply changes into command help us to do this much more quickly and concisely than we had to do manually when we implemented that logic in structured streaming. It is essential to highlight that Delta works with Parquet files for data and JSON files to keep the metadata. Any update applied to a row will create a new file. Here, there are two solutions. Let's review them. The first solution is to ignore deletes and changes. This keeps alignment with the append-only processing rule and simplifies stream processing. This can be achieved by leveraging the options Ignore Deletes that ignores transactions that delete data at partition boundaries. Skip Change Commits disregards file-changing operations entirely and only returns inserted rows, ignoring updates and deletes. And it subsumes Ignore Deletes, meaning it handles both deletions and updates to the source table. Be aware that the option Ignore Changes is now being deprecated in favor of Skip Change Commits. A use case is when the focus is on processing new data additions and separate logic can be implemented to handle changes if necessary. The second option uses Change Data Feed or CDF that allows tracking of row-level changes between versions of a Delta table, including row data and metadata. To use CDF on the table level, you must manually enable it during the table creation or after it is created using the alter table command. To take advantage of the Delta Change Data Feed, simply bring your external data sources to the bronze layer and enable CDF from that point forward. This will allow you to use the Change Data Feed to move to the silver or gold layers or feed out to an external platform. Be aware that using CDF incurs some additional overhead for storing CDC-related metadata. Some of the benefits that Change Data Feed does for you. It improves ETL pipelines, as CDF allows reading only the change feed rather than entire table. So when used in silver and gold layers, all changes are reflected with substantially less processing cost. Materialized views can eliminate the need for costly reaggregations of full tables. It unifies batch and streaming under a single command, since batch is also supported with a specified starting version. Minimal overhead for your downstream systems, such as a BI, as it allows incrementally updating databases efficiently. And we need to identify when, where, and how the data has been changed for regulatory compliance and audits. Change Data Feed outputs could be stored in a Delta table to provide a quick and queryable means of finding precisely what happened to a specific record, dataset, or table. Here is a common question. How is CDF different from CDC? First, Change Data Capture or CDC is a general concept applicable across systems and is implemented using the Apply Changes command, generally used with external systems. Meanwhile, CDF is specific for Delta tables where it needs to be enabled per table, and there are two options to reach this information. The first, via the change_data folder, or the preferred option using the table_changes function and providing a specific version of the table's history. How does Delta CDF work? We start with the original table, which has 3 records, A1 through A3, and 2 fields, PK and V. We then receive an updated version of this table that shows a change to field B in record A2, the removal of record A3, and the addition of record A4. As this gets processed, CDF captures only records for which there was a change. This allows CDF to speed up ETL pipelines as less data is being touched. Note that record A1 is not reflected in the Change Data Feed output, as no changes were made to that record. In the case of updates, the output contains what the record looked like before the change. This is called pre-image, as well as what it held after the change, and this is called post-image. This can be particularly helpful when producing aggregated facts or materialized views, as appropriate updates could be made to individual records without reprocessing all of the data underlying the table. This allows changes to be reflected more quickly in the data used for BI and visualization. For deletes and inserts, the affected record indicates whether it's been added or removed. Additionally, the Delta version is noted to maintain logs of what happened to that data. This allows greater granularity for regulatory and audit purposes as needed. We also capture the timestamp of these commits. While this depicts a batch process, the source of updates could be just as quickly by a stream instead. The change data feed output would be the same. There are two ways to consume the Delta change data feed in downstream processing: stream and batch. In the stream mode scenario shown above the timeline, you use Delta structure streaming to process the Delta change data feed as it comes in. This pattern allows microbatches to be consumed based on the latest checkpoint without waiting for predetermined time interval. The stream will simply process whatever has come in since the last checkpoint. In the timeline shown here, let us assume that the large observed from our previous example comes through at noon. Our next insert, that is the Delta version 3, commits at 12:08. The stream has already completed processing the first group and immediately picks up our 12:08 insert. It does not have to wait for a scheduled time to kick off. We then receive the insert for Delta version 4 at 12:09. The streaming process for the last commit has not yet been completed. Delta version 5, an update to the same record inserted in Delta version 4, comes in at 12:10:05. As soon as the prior stream microbatch completes, the next kicks off and picks up Delta version 4 and 5. As mentioned, this functions as a microbatch. You can now have an insert and update to a record in the same batch. You must add handling to choose the latest data to insert from this batch. For batch mode, the timeline is shown below. The Delta change feed is processed every X minutes together. You must then add logic to identify the current high watermark, the latest Delta version or timestamp previously processed, and pick up any changes from that point forward. The following our previous example, let us assume that this batch process will run every 10 minutes. When it kicks off at noon, it processes the large upsert. The process pauses until 10:12. When it starts again, it establishes the high water mark is Delta version 2 and has picked up everything since then. In this case, both version 3 and 4 are included. The batch then pauses again and does not pick up version 5 until 12:20, despite arriving shortly after the last batch was triggered. As previously mentioned, there are two ways to collect the changes. We'll see them both in the following demo. The first option is reading the stream, which leverages the change_data folder, located along with your data metadata. The second is for batch cases where you can query the table_changes function, using the table name and specifying the start and end versions of the table's history. Be aware that working with the table changes function will return the data in the specific version range, including 3 extra columns. Change type to indicate what type of change it is, which could be an insert, delete, update pre-image for the previous value, and update post-image for the updated value. We also have commit_version that provides the number of versions associated with the change, and commit_timestamp that provides the specific time of the change. Just to recap, CDF configuration is not enabled by default. If you want to apply it, allow it to use the delta.enableChangeDataFeed property in your table, whether from an altered table or by adding it in your table definition. Also, you can change the data feed with the history version or be very specific using the timestamp.